At one of the most famous Buddhist temples in China, the Lingyin Buddhist monastery, sometimes called the Monastery of the Soul's Retreat in English. It began in the 300s, probably around 1700 years old. The founder is reputed to be a monk who came from India. It, at one point, in around 1,000 years ago, it had 3,000 monks here. But in more recent times, it played a very important role too. During the Cultural Revolution, as the temples of Zhejiang province were closed, the monks were sent here, and the temple was closed off to the public. So it was a refuge for the monks. If you look behind me, you'll see that great wall, which has the legend, Shi Tian, you're a step away from paradise. In other words, that one step into belief will bring you salvation. We're going to go into this temple and show you what people are doing, what the buildings are, tell you something about that. But we come in with a question in mind. We've looked at China and we've seen that there's an enormous amount of tourism today. But is there also religious activity? In other words, is this temple simply a tourist site, which it certainly is, but it's also still a religious site? And we can only answer that question by going inside and seeing what's happening. We're here in the main courtyard of the Lingyin temple, or the Lingyin monastery. I'm facing what's called usually called the Tianwangdian, the Hall of the Heavenly Kings, which is sort of the guardian kings of a Buddhist temple. And traditionally, you would come in through that hall, and after you entered that, you'd come into the central square. We're looking at a building called, in Chinese, the Dashungjian, the Mahariva Hall, which contains the statue of the great Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha. In this case, the statue was built in 1956 because the earlier statue, made of camphor wood coated with gold, had collapsed as a beam came down. The hall itself is around 33 meters tall. It's a giant hall. And the thing I'd like you to pay attention to as I step out of the camera is what people are doing in this area. And we can talk about that later, but let's first take a look at what people are doing. So we're right outside of the Lingyin monastery, and along this ridge called the Feilai Feng, we see innumerable carvings, probably around almost 400 carvings in stone. But they're not from the Tang Dynasty, like the famous stone carvings of Lingyin and other places. These begin really in the year 951, during the Wuyue Kingdom, the Five Dynasties period, a southern kingdom based in Hangzhou. And they continue to be carved until the Ming Dynasty. You can see the popularity of the place. The stones I'm standing on have been worn down, worn smooth here too by endless pilgrims coming to worship. Now, the two statues next to me are from the Yuan dynasty. And remember that the Yuan dynasty is the period when the Mongols controlled China. When the Mongols came to China, they brought with them the Buddhism of Tibet. And they went and put Tibetan monks in charge of Buddhism in China proper. These two statues are from the Yuan dynasty. And within this complex of statues, you in fact have around 50 Tibetan Buddhist statues. And that's because during the Yuan period, when most of these statues were done, the Buddhist monks from Tibet had such power within China. You'll notice that the stream that runs down along in front of the temple has been blocked up here. And within this stream you see fish, you see some turtles. But what this this pool is a very distinctive part of a Buddhist temple. It's called the pool for releasing life. In Chinese, a fang sheng chi. And the idea is that Buddhists regard all sentient beings, all animals, as having value, having life, and that's why they're vegetarians, in principle vegetarians. And so one act of merit is to save an animal, to save a sentient being from being killed. And that brings you karmic merit. And so you can come to a place like this, and you can take a fish, and rather than bringing it home to eat, you bring it here and let it free so that it can live, thus gaining Buddhist merit.